Hello, everybody. Welcome to GCRE. It's Gavin here. Today we have the Mobile Home Park Show, Season 1, Episode 6 with Glenn Esserson. Today we're going to be talking about how to make money ethically when dealing with low-income families or low-income tenants in mobile home parks. Glenn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing marvelous. I hope the same is true for you.
It's nice. The weather was a bit nice today, but then I got horrible here. Typical
Yeah,
European weather. That's how it goes sometimes.
yeah,
So, Glenn,
happens.
pleasure to have you again on the show today. We're going to be talking about empathetic capitalism, the challenge of making money ethically when dealing with low income tenants.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this topic because it's something I think is going to be an interesting one. So I'm going to hand over the reins to you as we do normally every week, and the show is all yours now.
All right, all right. Well, I'm excited, guys. This is probably my most, important issue to me personally. All right, I love money. You guys love money. We all love money. It's great stuff. But making money on the backs of a poor person, it's different. You can't just sit there and squeeze. So this whole episode is kind of dedicated to the moral philosophy that I've kind of coined as an empathetic capitalist. And what that basically means is bringing in some empathy to your capitalism approach of making money. And I mean, that's why we're all investors. That's why we get into this business, and we want good returns. And I want you to get good returns. I want you to make ridiculous returns. I just don't want you to do it solely on the backs of your existing tenant base and the people that are hardest hit from an income level. Affordable housing is meant to be affordable, okay, first and foremost. And affordability ranges, comparatively to what is out of reach for many people. And it might have a larger spread, from a $2,000 apartment in Atlanta, maybe an affordable home there is $800 a month. And unfortunately, a lot of those $800 a month homes in markets like that are usually not places that are clean and something that you would want your grandma or your daughter living in. So the way that I kind of look at all this is, hey, there's enough to go around. And there's a way to do this where you can still make ridiculously strong yields and appease all your LPs and appease all the other people inside of your investment circle and still help the poorest guy that you're working with and get him a better foothold to have a better life ahead of him. And you do that by providing this affordable housing. So what does this all mean? I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to this: people over profits, okay? And I want you to have profits, but I want you to have the people in mind first, okay? So, I don't know how many of you guys in my audience have ever been dirt poor, okay? Raise your hand. I've been dirt poor. Okay, as poor as they come. I mean, ridiculously, like below $20,000 a year poor, and raising kids on that kind of income. And it's hard, man. It's hard. And when your landlord comes for, another $50, it's like, holy crud, how am I supposed to be able to afford that? For us, on the investment side, we think of $50 as disposable. To them, it's not disposable. And you have to understand that getting into this industry. And, I claim to be an affordable housing advocate. Okay, I claim to want to help the affordable index in this country. Now, if you're in line with that kind of mentality, then this might be a good episode for you. If you're just all about the profits and you don't care how you make them, hey, good for you. I'm probably not the right broker or person or human to discuss issues like this with you. But if you're in the approach that you can still make a lot of money and help other people out, then maybe there's something to learn from you. Other people have coined terms like compassionate capitalism and things like that. And that's all well fine to do. And I don't know what's the proper way to do it as far as the verbiage and the vernacular goes. But for me, empathy is important. That's what I needed most when I was at my poorest. Okay. And I needed, somebody not just drilling me with fees and squeezing every last penny out of my pocket that they could. And so I've brought that approach into my investment strategies and into the clientele that I help sell parks to. Our industry, the manufactured housing industry, has gotten a lot of bad press over the last year or two about bigger groups coming in and just squeezing everybody for what they're worth just because they can. And I was raised with the philosophy of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And, you know, when I bought my first park, I was still dirt poor. I spent every last dollar I had to be able to buy this really cruddy little park. And when I got there and started thinking, oh, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, I realized really quickly, oh man, I thought I was poor. And then I met these guys at my park, and I had to, you know, do a 180 on some of the ideas that I had with how I was going to exercise profit out of this investment. And so that's kind of how this builds on each other. And I want, you know, I'm going to kind of go to the left and to the right and, you know, up and down during this conversation, because it's not an easy piece to understand. But at the core of it, this is what you need to understand is, yes, you can make a lot of money while taking care of your tenants without jeopardizing other aspects of their life, so you can get another $50 in rent from them or whatever the number might be. So as we discuss this, there's a big concept here that you have to understand. Is there's the idea that when you have an investment, that your top goal is to make more money. For some reason, that's become the guidance that all the gurus have given us in the investment world, is learn how to push profits, generate revenues, reduce expenses, push profits. Well, what happens is when you do that is you piss a lot of people off, and maybe they don't have a voice, so it doesn't matter to you. But maybe they collectively do have a voice, and eventually you get a letter from a senator, or you get mentioned in the news, or a news paper article comes out that, hey, this landlord's doing this thing to all these people at this park, and you don't want that kind of bad press. You just don't. Yeah, you might live through it. You might even come out of it on top. You might win the whole argument. But that's not really the kind of guy I want to be. You know, you can do whatever you want to be. But for me personally, that's not the kind of guy that I want to be. I want to be known as the guy that helps as much as possible. And through all the people that I've helped, it's really helped generate more profits for me. And I continue to give back, and I continue to help, and I continue to find ways to not make my money off of the poorest of the poor. And that's what I want to be able to explain here with you. So when you get into manufactured housing, a lot of you guys get into it, because you want to help be an affordable housing advocate. You understand there's a real demand for affordable housing because of skyrocketing real estate prices and all these things that go into this aspect of it just gets more expensive every year you live. But our incomes for the majority of America have not risen to the same level as the pricing for rentals and for housing and stuff. I mean, in some markets, yeah, you can still buy a house, for $50,000 to $100,000 in America. I don't know that's necessarily the market that you're investing in, though. And if you're looking at more of the primary cities, good luck finding some decent place below a few $100,000 to live in. And, for banks requiring 10-20% down to buy your first home, it's just always going to be a little out of reach. Okay, especially if you're only making $25,000 or $50,000 a year. So, as an affordable housing advocate, this is what I got to say about it: is if you're buying parks and your goal is to help with the affordability of housing, and you have all these vacant lots, and you have these tenants who have below market rents in your park, which, hey, that sounds like a win-win, right? When you buy a park, below market rents and vacant lots. But the first thing you go to do is squeeze the tenant for a rent press because his rents are $100 below market and you want to catch up immediately. I personally think you're doing it a little wrong. I personally think the correct structure is to first fill any vacant homes you have on your lots. Okay, your park-owned homes, fill those things up, convert them to TOH as quickly as you can. Okay, then go start filling in your infill, those vacant lots. Start buying homes and bringing them in and getting those sold off to a tenant. And then after that, then you're looking at talking to the municipality because you've done a good job on infilling and you've prettied up the park a little bit. Now maybe you go and ask for an expansion, maybe a small expansion, maybe a large expansion. And you have yet to touch the rents of your legacy tenants. Okay, your new guys, get the new guy all day long if you have to. That's what you got to do to make the numbers work. I understand that. I'm not against that. And I'm not against rent increases. Of course, you got to have rent increases, okay? But you don't need to have a 50% rent increase. especially on your legacy tenants. So first, you're buying the park and you say, hey, here's the opportunity, and you have all these vacancies. You're going to fill the homes first, then you're going to fill the lots, then you're going to ask for an expansion. Then, and in my opinion, only then, after you put the capital back into the park for improved roads, signage, landscaping, this, that, or the other, and you've increased your occupancy, and you've sold off your homes, and you've either started or got denied to do your expansion, then you start talking to your legacy tenants, and you kind of need to put them kind of in a vertical tier of who can afford an increase and who can't. Okay, the little old lady in number 2 who's lived there for 20 years and she's on a fixed income, man, be the good person. Don't raise her rent, maybe ever. Like, who cares if she's below market? The vacant lot you just filled is worth so much more money on your net exit, okay, and your actual cash flow monthly than raising her rent, $25, $50, or $100. Okay, so what I would suggest is on your legacy tenants, you kind of create a structure where your good tenants who are not a pain in your butt, who are payers and on-time payers, at least as often as they can be, you kind of keep them pretty flat, or at a 3% kind of increase a year. I would really suggest never doing more than 5%. And if that 5% is more than $40, I would suggest limiting that to no more than $40 and having a real conversation with your tenants about why you're taking $40 from them. So again, I'm going to keep reiterating this just so we understand the process. You buy a park, it's got all this vacancy, whether it's vacant homes or vacant lots. You're filling those first. Ideally, fill the vacant homes first. That's just easy peasy. Get those things, transitioned into a lot rent. And now you have, the vacant lots to fill. You're bringing homes in. You're filling them with a tenant, with a tenant who can buy the home. You're finding them financing. Either you're licensed and you're financing it for them on a way that's affordable, or you're using a third party like a bank or a manufacturer that's going to finance them for them. And then after you get through that, then you're working on the expansion. And then when that's all done, you're going back to the legacy tenants that you inherited at acquisition, and saying, hey, I'm going to put you on a rent increase of 3 to 5%, a year. But here's all the stuff that I've already done at this park. As you can see, I got nice roads now. You're not living in a trailer park. You're now living in a manufactured home community. And some of them might say, hey, but that's really going to hurt me for a while. Can we work out a plan? And I really suggest that you work out a plan with them. It's, in my opinion, that's just, the right thing to do. If they were a good tenant for a while, they deserve some leniency if they hit a hard time. I mean, it's in my park that I owned. I don't know if these guys are lying to me or not, but man, the amount of sickness and mental health issues and job insecurity and all these other things that they were dealing with, it's more than you could imagine. And you're not living in their shoes. So you're just thinking, oh, well, you didn't go to school, or, you drink too much, or you got this, that, or the other, and that's why you're not getting ahead. And you need to get out because you can't pay your extra money and you've been behind. I'm not that landlord. In my mind, every time your unit goes vacant, you're down. You're down for a minute. You got to repair that thing. You got to, spend time marketing it. You're going to, probably be out, for 4 or 6 weeks, best case scenario, most of the time, to get a new tenant in there. And if you did a rush job, maybe you're kind of going to repeat that cycle a few times, but get a good tenant in there is probably going to take you at least 6 weeks. And, if you're trying to sell the home to a tenant, it might take a little bit longer, and you're going to have to, do all these repairs. So the net loss at the end of the year on all that income, had you just worked a plan with that person who was previously a good tenant, paying on time, but maybe his mother got sick and he lost his job and just needs a couple months to get back on his feet. Usually you can work that out with that guy over 6 or 12 months on payments. And if they live up to the agreement, you're going to come out ahead, and having that downtime and that repair time and that cost of the repair, just to get back to where this guy would have been anyways. Now, if the guy's, hustling you and telling you, yes, 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 but he only gives you no, when push comes to shove, hey, yeah, he's got to go. I get it. But first chances, give them. Second chances, give them, in my opinion. Now, granted, there's plenty of guys who have made tons of money in this business that totally disagree with this theory. But I think if I'm making money and I'm not, losing money on this thing, I have almost a moral obligation to help these tenants in my park to get a better foothold. And so on that foothold, okay, you should be implementing other things in your park to help these people have a better life, because it's going to help you generate more income. Things like resume building, things like English as a second language, things like, some temporary daycare type of stuff. Any kind of little program that's fairly cheap and doesn't produce a lot of exposure for you might be a great thing to bring into your park at a very low cost. That's going to help add some stickiness to your tenants, some loyalty to your tenants. They're going to see you not as the greedy landlord squeezing them for every dollar, but seeing them almost as somebody who's, helping them achieve more of their possibilities in life. And when at my park, when I would do rent increases, if I had to, my rents were $75 on some of my units when I picked up my park. $75. Imagine living on $75 and still kind of struggling with other aspects of your life. Well, some of those guys, over the 15 years I owned my park, their rent still never went above $100 or $125 because I was able to get the next guy. And the next guy, I'm probably getting 200 to 250 out of, and it's making up for what this one or two or three tenants are paying. So when I would do a rent increase, though, I would go to my surrounding communities. I would say, hey, this community is charging X amount of dollars, and they include, water and sewer, and this is what this address is and who to contact. And then I would go to the next park and get this one. This community's at, X amount of dollars, and it does not include water and sewer. And I would come up with a list of 5 or 10 parks within a few miles of my park and show it to my tenants. Be like, look, you're not chained here. You're not chained to a booth. You're allowed to pick your home up and move. If your home's movable. A lot of these homes aren't movable, so you have to have, some ability to help them understand that, because sometimes these homes can't be moved, they're too old or whatever. But here's my competition. Here's where I stand on rent. Here's where I need to go and rent. And over X amount of years, I do plan to get you there. But I don't want you to feel as if you're stuck here and I'm just squeezing you. So here's your list of options. Here's what I'm offering. And, as somebody who is concerned about you and who cares about you because you are part of my community, I want you to know your options, and I want you to be able to see that, there's a path forward for you and for me, that we can work this out together over time. Now, again, the new guy that's coming in, hey, man, market rent is market rent, and I'm going to have to recapitalize on you. You moved out to wherever you were to here. Now, I'm willing to give you a shot, but that shot costs market rent most of the time. Now, there's always a bleeding heart story, and I made plenty of compromises with plenty of people. I'm not suggesting that, everybody should stay at, rents from 1995 or nothing, but I am suggesting that the tenants that were in place, your legacy tenants, be very careful with them. If you're trying to get rich on somebody who's barely making $15,000 a year, you have to be really conscious of that. And if you're an advocate of affordable housing, I think if you're not filling your vacant lots first and you're just squeezing the tenants, you have to ask yourself, really, at the end of the day, are you just a straight up capitalist, or are you really a low income housing advocate? Because as an advocate, I would think providing more housing fulfills your goals. Now, if you're just a capitalist, hey, providing more housing is still going to fill your goal. So I see this as a win-win-win across all aspects of it, that you can come in and implement this. Now, the pressures you guys are going to immediately get from your investors, your limited partners, your LPs, is, hey, you told us we were getting X amount of returns, and we're not getting there, and this is the quickest way to get there. I want you to squeeze that rent, 100% in the next 2 years. And you're going to say, oh, I don't want to do that, or okay, I have to do that. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the pressure comes from. And as the GP and the operator in this equation, you should have set that expectation up front with your LPs that, hey, we're going to get to our 20% IRR, but we're not doing it overnight. And we're going to do it in this path. And we're going to use this philosophy of how we're going to get there. And we're going to maximize this opportunity, but it might take a little bit longer than some of the other groups that are squeezing overnight. And, a year ago, a lot of people ended up on the news and getting letters from the senators and stuff. And it was a pretty scary time. And now we're all looking at regulations coming down on us. And we're seeing other states, in the Midwest and Northeast, out West, looking at rent controls. And that's our own fault, guys. It's our own fault because we squeezed too hard. We weren't empathetic enough to our tenants, and realizing that, hey, the poor in America are getting poorer and they're getting bigger. Okay. And they're going to have a larger and larger voice as this continues to accelerate. Now, somebody much smarter than me once said, that capitalism will devour itself. Okay. And that's just true. Left unbridled, we just keep going for more because we're not conscious of the effect on the outside of our circle. And what happens is there's plenty of advocate groups out there with lots of money behind them that are trying to protect these other groups. And they're going to the congressmen and the representatives and saying, hey, look, we're having some foul play over here. We would like some assistance. And over time, that's going to lead our industry into much stricter regulation. And if we get in front of this now by bringing this empathetic approach to capitalism, we should be able to stave off some of that. We should be able to create some of our own regulations and best practices and things like that about how we do things so we can continue to make lots of money and have record profitability, but not just on the backs of the people in our parks by squeezing more life out of them when we still have all this other upside we have yet to achieve. And that's kind of the approach that I talk a lot about in my book, and you'll hear me, blabber on and on and on about it because it's really one of the most important topics to me. It's coming from the other side of the street back when I was way younger and seeing just, how hard life is, when you're poor, to where I kind of sit now and realizing, hey, I don't want to get to this higher end level if I'm just jamming rent creases down people's throats. I want to do it in a way where I don't feel bad at night, and I want to protect my industry and build out my industry. I think this empathetic approach is the right style nowadays. A lot of people are doing this approach. They just don't know they're doing it. There's some fantastic owners in this country that bring this approach with them. And, they have just record growth because they understand that the filling of your upside, your infill, your vacant lots, your vacant homes, that's the money. That's the money. That's where you make ridiculous returns because a $50 rent increase, what is it, $600 a year? That's nothing. You fill one lot at $300 a month, that's $3,600 a year. That's a whole lot more cheddar for you. And that should be the singular focus in the beginning when you're trying to drive profits is fill the upside, fill the upside, fill the upside. Worry about catching market rent over a 5 or 10 year structure. Don't worry about capturing market rent over a 1 to 3 year structure. It's going to be painful for your people. Okay. So I would love to talk to you more and more about this. And there's a thousand other things we can talk about and a bunch of little bunny trails we can chase and understand and explore. But at the end of the day, it's people over profits. And at the end of the day, it's okay to be a capitalist, man. I love money. Okay. But I have to also live with myself. And I know that if I'm jeopardizing my capital source, essentially my tenants, that it's going to eventually have a negative effect on me financially and probably a little bit mentally too. And I don't want to deal with that. I want to be the good guy as often as I can, and I want to make money, and I want to teach people how to use this method appropriately. And I think that's something that's missing in our industry, and I would really like to see more people kind of grab onto this style. And, from East Coast to West Coast, I probably know 50, 60 other owners in this country that are using this at massive parks, doing great things and improving the lives of their tenants. And to me, that's inspiring. And I would really like to see, more and more adopt that philosophy. That's about what I got to say. I'll get off, my rant here about it. But, guys, it's important. It's going to help stave off regulation. It's going to help grow your profitability. It's going to help you get stickier tenants at your park. And it's just going to give you a little bit stronger moral character. It's not a left or right issue. It's just, it's a human issue here. So that said, Gavin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we just discussed.
Greg, like always, you're quite an entertainer. I always say when we talk about these things. I actually got quite a lot of notes here today that I was
Great.
making about it. So I think some of the takeaways for me is yes, you can make money while still being caring and empathetic towards your target, sorry, your tenants. Always make sure that people come first when doing this. So that's a huge one. The other thing was while there's a huge demand right now for affordable housing, it does not mean that you have to treat people badly. I think that's something that we see a lot of in Europe. Certainly, when I lived in the UK, housing was such a demand in London, of all places, and the landlords would just capitalize on it. They would just keep raising the rent, and not care about the people. And people will get evicted all the time,
Yeah.
and that's really unfair for that. So that I really liked what you said there, and I think more people should really adopt that. So as a global television station, I hope the landlords in London who are looking at this should pay attention to that as well.
And I
Um,
know some great landlords in London that actually adopt this philosophy, and that are actually using it, and they're creating affordable housing. Now, you still can't be a terrible tenant and expect to get treated fairly. Okay, you still have to be a good tenant that can pay and live up to your word. But even in the UK, I know an owner up there. He's fantastic. He does some amazing things, and he's providing in affordable housing out there. Now, their affordable housing has an extra zero on the end of it as compared to America. It's much more expensive out there. So you're still going to have to find that balance. We're not talking about giving free everything to somebody. We're not talking about free rent. We're not talking about all of that kind of stuff. We're talking about keeping it in pace with being able to grow your profits without it restricting the growth of your tenants. And that's the philosophy that people just really have to understand. If you can help your tenants make more money, you're going to make more money. And if you can add more housing units to your investment, that's a faster way to make more money in the long run. And keeping your current tenants in place, not just evicting them the first sign of trouble, is also a way that you're going to help turn over, or create more growth at your park and profits by reducing your turnover and reducing your capital expenses on repairs and things like that, and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So everywhere I've gone in the world, I've been to 15, 16 countries. There's an affordable housing issue almost everywhere. Okay, and that's something that guys who embody this approach can help fix in their area. In their immediate local area, or on their national scale if they're a bigger guy, especially these bigger guys who are sitting on 5,000-10,000 lots, but they only have, 50% occupancy. I scratch my head on that one a lot. Like, what, I understand you guys are trying to build a massive empire, but what happened to all those vacant lots? How's your revenues grown so much, but you still got all those vacant lots? To me, that's not the approach I want to teach people. And people that want to learn that approach, hey, I'm not your guy. I'm not going to teach you how to do that approach. So, it's
well,
one of those.
funny you should say that, because funny you should say that. It brings me to my next point. You don't try to screw your legacy tenants when taking over a park. You got to be good to them, but also you may very well protect them and treat them very fairly, as you have always, or as they've always been treated, and respecting that. But also for the new guys that are coming in, as you said, there's people that have 10,000 parts that is just available, and half of it is full. Well, the other half you could be doing something with it, and that's where you make your real upside swing. But a lot of people don't think like that, and it's something I think that we all need to look at.
Most people reach for the easiest thing right in front of them, right? Okay, it's right here. I'll grab it. I get it. Hey, I've done it. I get it. But that's not, in my opinion, the way to real wealth and to real growth, especially with this industry. The poor are getting poorer, man, and they're having a harder and harder time, and they're getting more disenfranchised. You could be their beacon of light. You could be the guy that's helping your actual community, not just your park, but your actual local community with a real issue they're doing by exercising all that vacancy in your park, instead of just looking at, well, I got returns. I got to return to my LPs, and so I'm sorry, guys, squeeze. Give me another $50. I get it, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, well, I think if you squeeze your tenants for an extra $50, they will probably move on, as you said, quite
Exactly.
which I have put it down in my notes. You always show them what you, as a person, always show them what the competition looks like, and you always have an option to go there. But if you treat them fairly and you always work with them to educate them which kind of ties into my other point. You take time to understand where your tenants are and be able to educate them with resume writing, or helping them to get a job or to learn a trade or something like that is very valuable and would actually go a long way than trying to kick out somebody. And then you said somewhere in the conversation you said it takes on average about 6 weeks to maybe fill that vacancy.
Yep.
That's an average. It could be more than that, and then you lose in revenue. So your LPs aren't going to be happy with you either way. So why not treat the clients, sorry, not the clients, but the tenants fairly, and actually have them there? You might make a smaller profit margin, but you have longevity in the whole process.
Yeah, the stickiness of your tenants is what's going to make you most happy at the end of the day. And you get sticky tenants by being transparent and fair. Letting people know, hey, you got options. You're not glued here. Yeah, your home might not be able to be moved, or maybe it can be moved, but you're not stuck here. And I'm not trying to take advantage of that fact with you being here. I want you to know that there might be a cheaper option for you. But go look at the park and say if that's where you want to live. Do you want to leave your friends and find, and go through that process at these other parks? Hey, no problem. I'm here to support what's best for you. But at the same time, by doing that, they're looking at me like, hey, maybe this guy's not such a jerk. Maybe he has treated me fairly and he's giving me my options. And maybe I do want to stick here because I'm friends with all these other people here. And, it's a pain in the butt to move. And I'm going to move and save $50, and that guy's going to sell his park. And then the new guy's going to come in and he's going to jack my rent anyways. So, you want to be able to be transparent. Transparency in this day and age, man, to me, I think is just vital, because if you're not showing them, then they're going to go do it all sneakily and not have you in that process. And you're not really going to get a shot at keeping your tenant if you're doing it that way, in my opinion. And you might lose some tenants. Hey, high five. Good luck to you, man. Let me know if I could ever be of help if you need a referral or something. If you're a good tenant, I still want to see you have a good life, even if you're not living in my park anymore. So bringing that type of approach, man, I think it's a win-win-win for everybody involved. I think the LPs will get on board with this. I think eventually they'll see that over a longer time frame, they're still hitting their 20% IRRs or whatever IRR they're trying to hit, as you initially pitched them on. And I think that's going to be the better approach. And I think as we move forward in these next couple of cycles, I think it's going to become critical that we start looking at these kind of aspects, because regulations are coming. I mean, regulations in the Midwest have never seemed more like absolutely coming, and is it tomorrow? Is it next year? Is it after the election? Is it in 5 years? I don't know, but they're coming if we don't do something about it.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Regulations is inevitable, especially when you have charlatans in your industry, as it has had in the past. People do complain, and there's a lot of lobbyists now that's picking up stuff like this and running wild. So it's just one of those things where it's just a matter of when it does come out.
Yep. And they're going to put a blanket law, and it's going to affect everybody, and it's going to be unequal, and it's going to actually give some hard times. But hey, we did it to ourselves. It is what it is. This has happened up in New York a year or two ago, and it caused a lot of havoc. And now once people understand like how to work the regulations, that's when it starts getting even almost scary. It almost becomes less of a benefit to have these regulations for your tenants when you just get these blanket laws pushed in, because now all of a sudden you're actually like not able to have the freedom to improve these parks and spend the capital necessary to make these parks a healthy, safe place for your tenants. And you're starting to look at how to get your legacy tenants out as quickly as possible to repopulate them with a new tenant at a higher market rent, because that's what the law says you can do, and otherwise you're stuck growing this thing at peanuts on the dollar. And we want to avoid that. All of us, anybody in our industry should know that this is going to happen, and we want to get ahead of this. And the way you get ahead of it is by just changing the dynamic right now and bringing in this empathetic approach and understanding people over profits.
And you also mentioned that if you're not making money and you're not losing money, you should be happy about that, because either way you're not growing or you're not losing. And that's where you should really take the opportunity to understand your tenants, understand what you could do for them to be able to drive them further in their lives, so that you can actually do make more on the later on. I think you're right. The capitalists and everybody wants to make money now, and nobody's thinking about the longer term. But when you take that you adopt that mentality, as you quite rightfully said, capitalism is going to implode on itself, and it's a matter of time when it goes.
Look, implementing some of these other strategies like, I'm not going to name names, but hopefully they're hearing me and they know I'm talking about them. But some of these other groups have brought in English as a second language to their park. Okay, man, that is awesome. That you pay some college kid a few bucks a couple days a week to come and teach English as a second language to your tenants, so they can get a better resume, they can get a better job, they can get a better footing in the society. And guess who's not going to be late on the rent anymore? Like, they're going to start getting that money back into your park. Okay, and you're helping. It costs bupkis. Like, compared to the kind of money these parks, it's the smallest fraction of your expense ratio, and it's having the most impact. Things like that are so necessary. Tenants don't care about getting a new pool. They don't care about things like on the lower end, maybe at the amenity parks and the higher, stuff, different story. But I'm talking about the lower end stuff, just, in case I haven't already, discussed that. They want nice roads. They want, they want safe houses. They want, fencing that isn't falling apart. They want signage that actually looks like it's not from 50 years ago. They want things that are visually appealing and improving their life, and are also, not something that they're not using. Like you put in a clubhouse and a pool at most of these smaller end parks, they're never going to use it, and you justified capital improvements, so now you're going up $75 or $100 a rent because you gave them a pool or a clubhouse or something. I don't think you know your tenants so well if that's the kind of thing you're doing at that park. But boy, if you put in, a couple after school programs, and if you put in a couple resume building programs and things like that, you save money on the capital. You get a better reward for your tenant. You're going to have a stickier tenant. You're going to make more money in the long run.
I think also the tenants would actually look out for the park itself, the well-being of the park, and the infrastructure in the park. They would care more about it, and you would have to do less as well in that sense. Exactly. I think it's safe to say
they're not going to. They don't want people coming in there and messing it up. They don't want people coming in there and disrupting what they're doing and what you're trying to do. And that's the good thing. When you have when you bring this type of approach, your tenants will look out for you. When they start seeing another newer tenant coming in there and they see all the cars going in and out of this guy's house, and they're like, hey, I think you have a bad guy living in that unit, they're actually going to tell you. If you're at the park where you're a hands-off owner and you just squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, you think they're going to tell you that, hey, number two is a drug dealer, I'm just moving out? No, they're not going to tell you that. They're just going to move out. Okay, and now you're going to be stuck with a bad tenant, and you're going to be lost a good tenant. Whereas if you have the approach where you're just constantly trying to improve their lives, they're going to be like, hey, man, you got some knuckleheads living over there, and you should take a look at that. And you're going to preserve that tenant, and you're going to remove the bad tenant, and they're going to be looking out for you. I lived through that. I know exactly how these tenants are going to act that way. Because if you get to them where they see you not as the big old mean landlord who's always taking their money, but they look at you as somebody who cares about them, they're going to be careful with you. They're going to care back about you. They're going to help you have a better community because it benefits all of us that way.
Yeah, it becomes self-policing really more than anything else.
Exactly.
And I think my last point for anybody who is looking to invest in the mobile home or affordable living is don't let your LPs force your hands into being a bad person just to make a return. It doesn't work like that. Please, whatever you do, it's always going to come back to bite you in the behind, as we would say in England.
Yeah, you got to set the expectations with the LPs. Look, LPs are hard, man. You pitch them something, and if you actually got them to agree to give you their money, they're expecting you to live up to that. Okay. And so, for these guys that are giving you 50 grand at a time on these LPs, and you're building up, and to whatever your cost is, and you got 10, 20, 30 LPs in there all arguing about, hey, you promised this return, we're not seeing it. They will sue you. They absolutely will sue you. And that's not their fault. You set their expectation for that. So you need to really go back to the very beginning when you start building out your business plan for the acquisition to bring this approach into it. If you're raising money and saying, hey, we're bringing this empathetic capitalist approach, and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to get you to this 10-year IRR of 20%, but it's not going to happen in year 1 or 2. It's going to take a couple days longer to get us there because we're going to use this approach. And what I think you'll see at the end is we're going to exceed our numbers, and we're going to have less headache. Remember, at the end of the day, the thing that I always talk about is time value headache, man. This keeps the headache way down, and this keeps the value way up. And it's a longer approach. It's a more comprehensive, long-term vision approach of best practices, in my opinion.
Yes, totally agree. But Glenn, that's all the time we have for the show today. I really appreciate it as always, you being with us. This is episode 6. I look forward to what episode 7 is going to be. It's always a pleasure, talking to you and learning all these new things. As you know, you've opened up you've brought my perspective on the mobile home affordable park living category, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. So, is there any last words you want to leave with anybody before we go?
Guys, if you want to know more about this idea, I'm your guy. I'll be happy to talk your ear off about it. I'll be happy to give you some practical tips on what and what I think is the appropriate way. Just reach out anytime. Everybody on my team can help you with this approach. We are glued to this philosophy on my team, and we're here to expand this approach throughout our industry. I don't care if you live in Timbuktu or you live 5 minutes away. We're here to help you, and we want you to learn this approach. And I'm going to keep babbling on about all this stuff as long as I can, and hopefully one day we'll make a difference in this industry. And Gavin, I just love being on here with you. Just talking with you every time is always such a nice part of my day. And so thanks for listening to me, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to rant on like I do.
Okay, good. And also, what's the contact details if anybody wants to get hold of you?
You can find me on my website. That's the easiest way. All the contact information is there. That's the MHP Expert for the advisory stuff, or you can go to Eskerson MHC Team for our brokerage side, where we got 100 million plus worth of deals for sale.
Okay, super. Glenn, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Absolutely, Gavin. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Have a good one. Bye.